Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.
Well, if you've been noticing things are a little strange right now, maybe communication is off, you say something, you text something, you email, not what you meant, or it wasn't taken that way. Maybe you're having computer or phone issues. What is going on? Maybe it's what's called the Mercury Retrograde, and it's happening now. We're live on August 25th. However, if you're watching this on a playback, the Mercury Retrograde happens typically 3 times a year, typically for about 3 weeks. So you're going to be in one at some point in the near future. We're going to talk about that today, give you proof that it's actually going on. And she knows all about that. She is an amazing astrologer. I'm trying to remember the term. A psychological astrologer would make sense in terms that makes her different. She's a speaker, an author, and she's back with us. Carmen Turner-Schott is on the program. Welcome back. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? It's
well,
it's our Virgo season. The sun moved into Virgo on the 23rd of August, just a couple of days ago. So, and on that same day, we had a double whammy because the planet Mercury, the planet of communication, which rules the sign Virgo and Gemini, started spinning backwards in the sky, which we call retrograde. And what that means is that it's all energy, and its energy gets blocked. That's the only way I know how to describe it on a very basic way. And so we've been seeing this research. I mean, for many years, I've been researching it, and there's miscommunication, there's travel delays, computer technology issues, phones, miscommunication, so much so that people misperceive what you say and they react and maybe not even see it clearly. It's kind of like a haze around it. And one thing that's happened that I talk about a lot that I don't know, I always forget, is that Mercury retrograde also brings past issues back on the next cycle of retrograde, right? Like, so the last time it was retrograde, I believe, was March. It was in the winter, or spring, winter, and so all of a sudden those same issues or people will pop back up now, which happened to me this week. Multiple.
See, that's interesting that it was during that retrograde. And now this one, I've had things from my past come back, but not from a recent previous retrograde. So interesting.
Yes.
Never ceases to amaze. On the technical issue, I'm very geeky, tech savvy. That's my thing. So last week or two, and there was a pre-phase of this retrograde.
Yes.
I've been seeing paper print on my printer with erroneous characters. Blah, 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 blah. One page I have garbled stuff, whatever. I'm like, what is that? And then I come in here yesterday, and then this printed. Now we're talking technology, which is affected by the retrograde. And I don't know if you can see this, but I'll read it to you.
Oh.
My printer got hacked.
Oh my gosh. Are you serious?
They're claiming they want money in a Bitcoin account, or they're going to put all my files up online, blah, 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 blah.
Oh,
somehow I changed routers, and they probably infiltrated that. I've since 90% sure I've locked it all down. There's no issues, and they probably can't do anything anyway. They're just able to print. But coincidence or not, happened during the retrograde. Why not 3 weeks from now? Why?
Exactly. And why to you? Because you've got all this Mercury energy, as a Virgo. I feel like the Virgos I know are more affected than any other sun sign. I mean, we're all affected, but Virgos specifically, they can feel it coming like the week or so before it's really retrograde. They're like, oh yeah, I feel it. And that's what happened to me. It started affecting us. I mean, a couple of shows ago, I couldn't get my camera to work. It was just like I didn't have a camera. And then I had a live workshop I did this past weekend, and it kept I kept freezing. They kept, oh, you're cutting out, you're freezing. I'm like, what is going on? And so it was one thing after the other. So, and then this week has just been
yeah. You just reminded me. So I get a work-related phone call. The guy's on the line, and I've spoken with him before, never met him, but he's connected to a company, whatever.
Yes.
And he's on there and he's got a very big personality. So he's like,
Yes.
yeah, it's going to be great. I got an idea. This is what we're going to do. This is fantastic. This is this. Blah, 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 blah. I'm
Yes.
like, yeah, okay, we can do that. And I'm part of what he does. And I'm like, yeah. And then I'm kind of piece it together. Like, it doesn't totally apply to me. And I'm
Sure.
trying to figure out why. And then he says something about a certain document manual. And I'm like, I don't have that. I don't know what you're talking about. He goes, yeah, you got it. You have that. You have that. I'm like,
Oh,
no, I don't. And then he says, all right, yeah, I'll talk to you soon. And he hangs up. Then I put it together. He thought he was calling another Steve.
oh my gosh. See this, you just can't, it's real life things that manifest at these things that are crazy. I literally was laughing I started laughing when it hit me in the kitchen this week. At first I was upset. I had something happen work related, but it affected a lot of people in a bad way. And when I went back and looked, I'm like, wait a minute. So when I'm talking, okay, first of all, I get a call. I'm so sorry, I wasn't tracking this. I wouldn't even have known, except something got flagged. And one of my people called me and said, I'm so sorry, Carmen, but I had no idea that this changed and the date. So I get called from someone higher up and I'm like, listen, I was not tracking this. Like, you guys haven't said a word about this on the calls every month. Like, there's miscommunication, no communication, right? And it was all, I said, this is a communication issue. And I wasn't even thinking about Mercury retrograde. Okay. And this happened on Wednesday, the day it went retrograde. I'm not kidding. And I said, this is going to affect many people. There's people out there that don't even know that this happened. So what can we do to make it better? I said, communicate. You guys should have been emailing us and telling us. You know what they said? Well, we sent an email in March and you guys didn't read the fine print. And I'm like, oh my gosh. So one email in March, of course, no one's going to remember that. I mean, it's August. So I said, you guys should have sent multiple emails. We should have had reminders. So it was all a communication issue. And when I realized,
and was it during the March retrograde too?
yes,
Oh.
it was I look back at the email and in the fine print, when you scroll through, no one would have noticed it. No one of my colleagues were tracking this either. I called to warn them. They said, no, that's not what they told us. I said, it's what's happening now. And they could not believe it. And I said, I told my friend who is open to this, I said, Mercury retrograde. And I put a little meme and she said, oh, it is. And so we started laughing. So you just got to let it roll because you
Absolutely.
can't control it. Yeah. And I'm like, and there's no sense getting mad. And I told him, listen, this is a huge miscommunication. I didn't tell him, hey, this is Mercury retrograde, because they probably think I'm crazy, but it was.
I'm very selective when I talk to people,
Yeah.
whether I'm going to tell them or point out that maybe this is related to the retrograde. And there are some in my circles that are not into astrology or, but
Yeah.
they know when I say it. And I even have one friend that I work with, and he'll even say retrograde. I'm like, yep, because he knows the drill, but he's not like super into it or anything like that. But when crap happens, if you will, he's aware that, because I bring it up from time to time. But really, it's life. You got to go through it. And my thing is check and double check before you send texts and emails. Don't get lazy. We can talk about it now and 3 days from now, because it lasts for 3 weeks. You got to make sure you get to the end and then the post phase. It's easy just to get laxed in what you do, but you need to pay a little more attention. And be prepared. Back up stuff if you can. All
That's
of
right.
that.
It's funny. It's funny because things from the past typically come back that were not handled or organized or completed. So that's why they would say, during Mercury retrograde, it's a good time to finish old projects, things that you never finished or things you procrastinated. And people from the past, old relationships, old colleagues will contact me out of the blue. People I haven't heard from in years. Happened this week. Hey, I haven't talked to you in a while. How are you? It's been like 2 years. I'm like, wow. And so people have an urge to communicate with you, but it's not new things. It's like kind of from the past. And that's what happened this week with multiple things. I'm like, I thought I'd already dealt with this. And then I had to get on, had to do with schedules of some surgery that I'm going to be having. I get a bill in the mail and they weren't tracking that I had insurance, Steve. And I mean, it was like a big bill. And I'm like, I gave them all my insurance information. I have 2 insurances. And I called the nurse. She's like, I have no idea how this happened. Well, I'm thinking Mercury retrograde. I knew it was. And I'm like, well, I'm not coming in a couple of weeks for surgery if you guys don't have this fixed. She's like, oh, we'll get it fixed. So I'm a little worried, and I'm going to make sure, because Mercury is going to be, it's still retrograde. It's going to be for a couple of weeks. And when I have my surgery, it's still going to be in shadow. And so I need to make sure that I'm not getting a $20,000 bill.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
It's crazy.
It's funny. I did get a $20,000 bill.
Oh.
And I should look back and see if it was during a retrograde. You know what? It may have been, because there was one, correct me if I'm wrong, but there was one in December that transitioned over to the new year. And it was the 4th retrograde, which is rare in a year. Usually it's 3.
Yeah.
And I think that was during that time. But as it happened, and it was for a surgical procedure, yes. I looked closer at the bill. I got like 3 of them and ignored them. Wow. I didn't want to deal with it. I looked, and I was only responsible for like $2,000 in this situation. I picked this doctor, wasn't fully covered. Sure. But I didn't look closer at it. I just did the other day and then paid it and got rid of it. But it could have been during a retrograde as well, where it said, I don't think when I first got those notices that it downgraded. It was like $22K out of the gate. So it might have been during a retrograde. Yeah. And what you said before, you started talking about things that are coming from your past, but we're also not supposed to start anything new.
That's right. And don't sign new contracts. I have had, and any, like, if you're going to plan a trip, don't buy tickets right now. Like, you might have the notion, okay, just wait and wait for everything, because you can get stuck into something and it always changes. It's amazing to me. Like, something that I will maybe be forced. Sometimes there's things we don't have a choice. That, like, I know it's not a good time to do this, but it's like, we have to. And every time I have seen that come back to bite me later. And it's like a learning lesson. I'm like, I knew that we shouldn't have did this. My husband and I were going to buy a house. I may have told this before. And we were going to buy it. It was Mercury retrograde. It was like right in the beginning of it. And I'm like, this is not a good time to buy anything or to sign contracts. And every single thing along the way was a hiccup. They would change their mind. They wanted to take the water softener. Then they wanted to take the gas. And we had already agreed. And there was this miscommunication about stuff. And then we get a call. The realtor said, they decide they don't want to sell the house now. And we had already bought it. We already signed. She's like, well, you can go to court or you can walk away. We're like, we're going to walk away. I mean, I'm not going to go to court and try to fight for a house.
And it's already, or is it bad experience anyway? So who knows what's coming next?
Yeah.
You know what I've done too? I've looked back at events in my life, and some of them were huge. Some of them were in the broadcast world, for me, of national proportions.
Nice.
Not even kidding. And the situation wasn't a nice situation, but I was involved in it, and the outcome was good. Years ago, it was a hostage situation.
Oh my gosh.
And I was involved in it. I was involved in, long story short, substitute teacher took students hostage at a school, shot some of them, including the principal.
Oh no.
They all survived. He picked me to read his garbage on the air.
Oh.
And I had to do it. The police had I just started my broadcast career. And they would walk in and say, you need to read this now. And he was doing dedications to his dog, wanted to hear songs, all of that. I looked back, and it was during a retrograde.
Was it really?
Coincidence? Maybe.
No. And this, like, you tell me this, I just got chills, because this is your 8th house right there. That crisis, that, like, no joke, in the moment, kind of deep, dark kind of a energy, and a very serious situation. And you were put in it, and you thrived, because you're an 8th house, or you're that is amazing. That's an 8th house story right there too.
And we talked about the 8th and the 12th house previously. I was literally, long story short here, I was part-time on the big station, got a job big. I mean, I was barely 20.
That's amazing.
And I was already part-time for 3 years. They elevated me to full-time news and public service director. I didn't even know how to pronounce half the names of politicians when I did a newscast, but they had faith in me, and I pulled it off. I was not even in that position for 3 months when this happened. So
Wow.
now it was like go time. I've got CNN with a camera in my face. I've got
Oh,
police walking in. The thing lasted like 9 hours during the day.
oh,
And
wow.
eventually the um, individual took his own life in the end. But
Oh,
but it
oh,
was, yeah, it was but it was during
that
a retrograde.
is a very intense, deep experience. And of
Yeah.
course, during a retrograde. And it's interesting because, you know, during retrogrades, it can bring up old feelings too, you know, old memories, old emotions, old situations. So reminiscing about what's happened in the past. That
Mhm.
also happens during this time, which we're talking about past stuff that affected us.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
that's an amazing story, Steve. Oh my gosh. I
I wouldn't
cannot.
have brought it up at all, except it what I found it surprising that it did take place during a retrograde. How about the moon? How does that all affect everything within a retrograde and not?
Yes, so we got a big thing coming up. This is the month where we have what's called the blue moon, which only happens, you know, that once in a blue moon thing they say,
Ah,
because we have two full moons in one month, which doesn't happen very often. So this August is a special month, and it happens on the 30th of August,
during
and
a
it
retrograde.
yes, and that's powerful, and it's in Pisces, which is Virgo's opposite, you know, in the sky. And so it's that Virgo Pisces energy that we have going on because the sun is in Virgo, Mercury is in Virgo retrograde, and the ruler of Virgo. And then we got Pisces, full moon, which is going to bring up a lot of emotions because it's going to make us feel a little bit sad and cry easier and be more sensitive and open to energy because it's Pisces, it's the 12th house energy. So it's Neptune. It's all about feeling a little bit more sensitive, and your energy might feel a little out of whack. You might just want to withdraw and be alone and not talking to people. It's going to intensify that Mercury retrograde because my daughter, she's a Virgo. She called me yesterday and said, Mom, I don't know what it is. I just don't feel like talking to anyone. And I started feeling that way on Wednesday when it went retrograde. And I'm usually a talker, right? I didn't even want to answer the phone. And when people call, they're like, man, you're really quiet than usual. I said, yeah, I don't really have much to say. So Mercury retrograde also does it to us. It makes us
Wow.
not as communicative. You know, we just are a little bit more introverted and just quiet because we don't really want to talk as much. You know, that affects us too. But the moon is our intuition in our chart, and the moon is it. Everyone has intuition, and everyone has a moon sign, and the moon affects all of the life on Earth. So the moon makes us feel a heightened sense of emotion, and we really look at the phases of the moon. And I was just looking at some research about the moon, and it was a cool statistic. I was just looking at about 41% of medical personnel believe that the full moon affects people's behavior and health. And there are surgeons that won't do surgeries during a full moon. I
Hmm.
mean, and it's because they've seen things go wrong because there's research that even the full moon can affect people's blood, specifically their blood. And, you know, when you do
Wow.
surgery, you know, the tendency to bleed is very high. It's already, you know, it's a risk going into surgery. So there's all these things, right? And I laugh because my husband's an OR nurse, and he has a couple surgeons in the past. He told me stories, and I'm like, wow. Like one guy, he refused to do surgeries during a full moon, and he walked out. He said, I'm not doing it, you know. And he had to have a special hat on, a special good luck hat, if he was forced to do a surgery during a full moon. And my husband, of course, doesn't believe in any of this stuff. He's my opposite, but he's like, I
Yeah.
can't believe him. He sounds like you. I go, well, hey, he's probably had something happen, and he's a little bit, you know, cautious now. I mean, you know.
I personally, if it's elective surgery, I wouldn't do it during a retrograde. I've actually moved the date during if I can, why not?
you
You
need
know?
to you need to, because there's a lot of stories of you know, miscommunication, things going wrong, people them leaving sponges in people, operating on the this is a classic one. I'm gonna do some research in it, and I've heard about it, that sometimes, you know, when you hear these horror stories, people operating on the wrong limb, on the wrong hand or ear, you know, whatever, and they got mixed up. And what is that? That's communication.
That's
Because
communication.
this communication is everything in life. I mean, if you
Yeah.
think about it. And so this is a big deal, man, right now, Mercury
All
man.
right. So that being said, your opinion, Guess got to factor in the blue moon situation.
Oh yeah, the blue moon.
Scale of 1 to 10, 10 being, whoa, strap in. This is a crazy retrograde.
Yes.
1 being, you're going to be good. Where would you put this one?
I'm going to say 9.5. There's going to be a lot of things happen, I feel like, the next week or so, like in the world. I mean,
well, okay. I'm just going to, you just brought that to my mind. I don't do politics. I don't go there. Somebody just had his mugshot taken.
Yes. I saw that. And did you see the debates? Were they not heated and emotional? I mean, it was crazy. They were interrupting each other. I mean, some of them were nailing some words. They were using their words right to really attack, and miscommunication too. I mean, they couldn't even get the two people that were running it couldn't even get them to take turns. They're like, when it beeps, that means you're done. I was like, wow,
coincidence or not? Why now?
I know, right?
Could that have happened before a retrograde, or when there was not a retrograde period going on? Sure. Yeah, but it's interesting how all this stuff is all being, it just stacks up. It just stacks up.
The emotions are high, and so we're looking at, okay, the 30th, it's full. So we're looking at, Steve, I would even say this Sunday, that people will be feeling a heightened sense of emotion, because I always feel the full moon energy a couple days before it goes full, and it affects our sleep. So there's research that people sleep less. Children act up and have behavior issues during a full moon. So we also are going to, it's like a double whammy, because it's a blue moon. It's a full moon in Pisces, which is a very deep and emotional moon. I mean, Pisces is sensitive and lacks boundaries and empathic, and, cries easily, compassion, kind. And so there's just a tendency, and water, what's coming to me is, I don't know, I just have been seeing a lot, something with water. Could be floods. The moon affects the ocean. And so hurricanes, water, flooding, all of these types of things can happen with the moon cycles as well, kind of affects that. So that's something that I've noticed. And I'd like to do some research, thinking about it. Years ago, when the tsunami happened, I remember I had a dream the night before, and I was in the ocean getting hit up against these rocks. And it was such a vivid dream. It just felt real. And I swam down, saw all the sea animals were going nuts. I woke up that morning, and I knew, I usually don't dream like that unless the moon is in a water sign, Pisces, Scorpio, or Cancer, right? And I know I think the moon was in Pisces at that time, the full moon. I went downstairs, and my husband's like, look at the TV. There was a tsunami. I just felt, oh my gosh, I dreamed this. And I can't even explain it to anyone, Steve. It was very emotional, and it was horrible. And so I think that the moon really does affect the tides. Of course, it affects our inner nature. Our moon is our inner nature, our emotions, how we feel, how we react. So people are more reactive. That's something to remember. And with communication being kind of haywire, be careful what you speak and say and write right now. Just wait. Be patient, just because people can be more emotional because of this full moon coming up, and they may regret what they're saying, or there could be more disagreements and miscommunication, even heightened, because what we say is not going to be perceived and interpreted the right way. I mean, I just said to somebody the other day, that's not what I meant. What I'm saying, this was a work thing, I kept trying to explain why this was an issue, that they did not tell us something, and they didn't get it. It's like, that's your responsibility. You guys should have been reading the email, right? And I'm like, no. So we'll agree to disagree. That's what I said. And it was silence on the phone. Okay, talk to you later, because I didn't want to say anything else, because I could feel my emotions coming up, and that frustration, right? And I'm like, I'm just going to keep my mouth shut. And then on a call yesterday, I said nothing. I wanted to say something so bad, Steve, but I just kept quiet. And that was good.
Good for you. Good for you.
It was hard. It was hard, Steve. But I did it.
It's hurt. I bit my lip. It's so hard.
I know. I was like, I wish I would have said this. And everybody,
you know what? It'll come back to bite you. It'll come back to haunt you. And what's the outcome anyway? You're doing it during a retrograde, so it's probably not going to be taken the way you intended it to be. Even if you know you're right, even if it had to be said.
Yes.
It's like tap the brakes, but hopefully this is some insight. And by the way, if you're hearing this after this August 23 retrograde, there'll be another one. Don't worry.
Yes, we'll have another one. Yeah.
We'll have another one. How do we find you? What's the best way if somebody wants to learn more about you in terms of astrology? You do charts, you have predictions, you have insight. How does that work?
Yeah, so you can go to my website, CarmenTurner-Schott.com. It's SCHOTT.com, Carmen Turner-Schott. And then I have a YouTube channel. I'm trying to grow that. I have a lot, some videos on there, and I'm trying to, put these videos on there as well of us. And so that's Carmen Turner-Schott is my handle.
Mm-hmm.
And then I Deep Soul Divers Astrology page on Facebook, Carmen Turner-Schott author on Instagram. And would love for you to follow my page. I post stuff, about Mercury retrograde, different astrological energies going on. And I do book giveaways, different discounts for, consultations with me, things like that. I write articles, so I post them. Any videos I do or any podcast I'm on, I post. And so would love for you to follow my YouTube channel as well and subscribe to notifications so you know when there's a video.
And
so,
what makes you different in closing here? Because we are out of time.
Yeah.
You have a background of working with people psychologically. So you blend that with the astrology, and wow, what a combination that is, especially what we're talking about here with the retrograde, where personality clashes and things come up like that. So listen to what Carmen is saying. That's all I'm going to say. Always great having you on, and everybody good luck with the retrograde, and we'll talk soon. Okay.
Let's hang in there. Okay. Thank you.
Broadcasting from the business capital of the world, this is the Podcast Business News Network.